Good morning. I'm going to call the Kaneohe County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. The first order of business is to stand and recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everybody. As we all kind of prepare ourselves for hunkering down for a few days. Those of you watching us, thank you for joining us. And it's a kind of a new day for us in that we are going to, over the next couple of days, say goodbye to our old administrator, Larry Kleindahl, and welcome our new administrator, Kelsey Baker. So, Kelsey, you get the first opportunity if you want to share a few words with us.
Yes, so I'm Kelsey Baker. I started last Wednesday, February 15th. I'm really excited. Larry's been helping with the transition. So I'm excited to serve the residents and the staff and the board and Kaneohe County.
Welcome aboard. So all of you proceeding with the agenda, you all received the agenda in your packet, including the consent agenda. You've received that. Is there anything from the consent agenda that you wish to pull? Hearing no such effect, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Gardner. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Dale Anderson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to general business discussion. First order of business is Resolution 2023-8 Corridors of Commerce Program. Mr. Odens.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, you've heard this.
You are.
I'm Mel Odens, Public Works Director for Kaneohe County. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did make application for a Corridors of Commerce project for the modified interchange at New London, Trunk Highway 9 and Trunk Highway 23. We've been here before the county board to offer resolutions of support to other agencies. And now what they need is a resolution of support specific that the county supports it, specific to the state. So it feels a little redundant and feels like it's action we've taken before, but minimum requirements that they need is they need a resolution of support from all three government entities, which would be the county, the city, and the township. And we got the cities and we'll be getting the townships on Friday. And then they need also letters of support from the
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we pass Resolution 2023-8.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on Resolution 2023-8. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion for 2023-8.
Commissioner Berg seconds. Do I hear any discussion? Keep our fingers crossed, folks. This is a big deal if we can get this. And we also have the resolution or letter of support from the New London Spicer School District. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of community support, and hopefully we get treated well in this deal. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. And you have another resolution.
I do, Mr. Chair. It's a negative declaration for an environmental impact statement. So we're doing 4.2 miles of our County Road 119, which is on the south side of Lake Wakanda. It goes from 71 over to our County Road 3, and it's a reconstruction. We're going to be taking out some curves, and we've done all of the environmental reviews, the cultural resource, and what this project triggered was the environmental assessment worksheet. The next level up would be the EIS, and the environmental assessment worksheet. The findings and conclusions are in your packet, and it indicates that we've satisfied the need for this project. It's a negative declaration, if you will, and so we do not need to go to the EIS level. So this resolution is basically that the county board agrees with these findings And it's declaring that this project has limited potential for producing any negative impacts, and therefore we do not need to prepare an environmental impact statement. So with that, Mr. Chair, they want it by resolution. So I would offer up Resolution 2023-9, which states in summary what I just explained to you.
So you've heard Mr. Odens. What are your wishes on Resolution 2023-9?
Mr. Chair, I'll move Resolution 2023-9.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves on 2023-9. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any further discussion? Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, I see Scott is not here yet. Are you representing the U.S. Fish and Wildlife? Okay.
Commissioners and members of the board, I'm Jenny Lippert, Health and Human Services Director. So the first item that I have on the agenda today is a proposal to have Des Moines Valley Health and Human Services act as a fiscal host, fiscal agent for our Southwestern Minnesota Adult Mental Health Consortium. So along with Kandiyohi County, Rock, Nobles, Jackson, Pipestone, Cottonwood, Redwood, Yellow Medicine, Renville, McLeod, Lacoparle, Chippewa, Big Stone, Swift, Meeker, Lincoln, Lyon, and Murray counties collectively make up the consortium. So Des Moines Valley Health and Human Services is proposing to receive 2.5% of all annual revenues on a quarterly basis off of all of the grants that the consortium receives to act as this fiscal host and fiscal agent for the consortium. So the consortium is asking every county's board to go through this, and my recommendation is to move forward with Des Moines Valley to act as a fiscal host.
So I just want to clarify, there's no resolution or letter of support here, just want to be on the record as supporting that.
Yes, I do have a contract, so this will be a contract, so we do need to vote on it to move forward with them being that fiscal agent. Yeah.
All right, so you heard Ms. Lippert's recommendation? Do I hear a motion?
I so moved to support this motion. I also serve on that committee for the 18 County Mental Health Consortium. And there was a wanting, the county that did it before is wanting to change, and there's been a lot of changes and some issues dealing with DHS about the dollars and so forth. So these counties stepped up and were willing to do it, and the consortium board did support that, and we're really being asked if we would sign off on it.
So I assume that's a motion.
That is a motion to accept.
We have a motion to enter into the contract. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? I assume that this Des Moines Valley, it seems incongruent because we all know that's Iowa, but that they have done a lot of this kind of work before, and 2.5% seems a really fair administrative fee.
Yes, it will. They have done this work before. They're very versed in it. They've got the staff capacity, and it will come out to be around $55,000 annually. So very minimum for the amount of work that goes into being the fiscal host for such a big consortium.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to continue to proceed as long as you're up there, Jenny?
Please. So the next item that I have on the agenda is just a training notification for all commissioners. So our Health and Human Services Department is required to provide annual training on Medicare abuse and fraud prevention detection and reporting training for all of our staff in our department, as well as to all county commissioners. This is a state and federal requirement since our agency bills and works with Medicare and also fellow contracted healthcare providers. So as commissioners, you all play a vital role in protecting the integrity of our Medicare program. And so in your board packets, there was a PowerPoint training. I'm just asking that you all go through and review that training on your own. And then I do have a certification form that when you've gone through the training on your own, we're just asking that you sign that, and you can give that to Karen in the office up in administration. Any questions?
No, you're not requiring any action here today.
Nope, it's just as a FYI, and to have you all complete the training on your own here in the next couple weeks would be the request.
Are there any questions of the board? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Scott Glupa is not going to be able to make it, so they could go next.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
I was just gonna suggest a break. I gotta keep track of where I'm at here. That page is done. All right, so U.S. Fish and Wildlife, grant of easement and maps. Who do we have here today? Scott's not here. Carrie Olson? Yeah, I'm Carrie Olson. Okay, please come forward. And if you would state your name and who you represent for the record, please. And we do have a camera. So if you have any documents that you wish to share, if you lay them down on the podium, the camera will shine down on them, so. And I take it by process of elimination, you're Jessica.
Sorry. She's the case manager.
Okay,
So this is Todd.
Todd Boonstra.
I thought, welcome. All right, proceed. And take your time if you're, had to run up the steps.
Sit down, sorry. There. Okay, so I'm Jessica Paler. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm here to present a habitat easement for John Nelson in Colfax County.
Do you want to speak a little more into that
Yes,
mic? Thank
I
you.
can.
Yeah,
Sorry,
thank you.
I'm kind of quiet.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm here to present a habitat easement for John Nelson in Colfax County.
Okay,
Now, this will be owned by the property owner. He'll still pay taxes on it, and it won't be open to the public for use. If you have any questions, please let us know.
so what does this really entail? You're just looking for an easement for U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or can you give us a little more background on what this easement entails and how it impacts the landowners and the community, if at all?
Yeah, I'll do my best. I'm pretty new, so that's why I've asked my coworker to come so he can assist. So John Nelson is interested in selling an easement to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife on his property. He already has RIM up here on the map, and he'd like to put the rest of his property in the easement with Fish and Wildlife Service.
And this easement means that it won't be developed?
Correct. It would be put back
A
into native
conservation
grass.
easement.
Yes. It's my understanding that this parcel is.
Would you step up to the mic, sir?
Excuse me, sorry.
And
My
state
understanding
your name and,
I'm Mike Carey, also U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's my understanding this parcel is pasture, forested areas, wetland areas, and no cropland. And we're seeking certification for potential, we take this to the Land Exchange Board later. This is kind of our notification to the county.
sure. Thank you.
And these guys have a little more details about it.
Any questions from board members? And we are seeking what, do you need our, is this informative or do you need our approval?
We would need you to certify. I have a form here that would
Got
need
it.
certification.
Because some things don't require permission and some do, so.
Yes, and he is planning on keeping out a building site on there for a home if somebody wants to build there in the future. He has children he's hoping to pass the land on to. They're also planning on keeping a food plot out for the wildlife.
So your request today is the certification that you mentioned?
Yes.
Okay, so you heard the request from U.S. Fish and Wildlife. How do you wish to proceed?
Also move to approve this.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves on the approval of the certification. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to thank you and thank them for stepping forward. I think just anytime we move in this direction with our environmental issues in Candy County is a very positive thing, so thank you.
Yeah, and also, I would just add that, the landowners make a bit of a commitment too, that they probably chose conservation over, money, because they could probably clear this land and put an irrigator on it in that case, and so, it's a good thing for landowners to be stepping up and doing some of this work, so. Is this John Nelson who lives over on Rice Lake now? You know who I'm talking about, Dale?
Yeah, I don't know.
His current address lists St. Cloud. So I'm not sure if he's got the property in the county.
So there was a John Nelson that used to serve on the North Fork Watershed District Board, and I know that that's kind of his stomping grounds. I'm just curious. Nelson's not that uncommon of a name in these
It
parts.
sounds like it might be though.
Yeah, Margaret's shaking her head
Yeah,
back.
Margaret, yeah, it's going this way.
All right, so any
Thank you.
other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you guys for coming in. You know what, we're running kind of way ahead here. Let's take a 5-minute break here so that, if we need to go refresh ourselves or whatever. I will reconvene the Board of the Kennewick County Commissioners. Now we are going to pull out my agenda again. Welcome Aaron Backman from the Executive Director of the Kennewick County City of Wilmer Economic Development Commission. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the County Commission. I am pleased to present to you the 2023 housing study for the Kandiyohi County. And I should point out there's actually two studies. This is the Kandiyohi County, all 149 pages of it. And then this is the Wilmer study, 90-some pages as well.
Can I stop you right there for a second? Kind of looking for the introduction and the executive conclusion if there's 149 pages.
That's right. Well, you know I like data, and so I will get to the key findings. The housing studies were undertaken by Jay Thompson of Viewpoint Consulting. Funding for the housing studies came from, which we are grateful, the HRA, the City of Wilmer, the West Central Realtors Association, and the EDC. So, what are the key findings? Let's start with demographics and projected household growth. Wilmer, as you know, is a regional center with around 18,500 jobs, of which about 2/3 commuted from areas outside of the community. On a typical workday, about 12,600 people commute into Wilmer to work. That's fairly high percentage. For example, Duluth has about 35,000 people that commute into work, or about 3 times as many as Wilmer. But Duluth has 4 times the population as Wilmer. Overall, about 70% of the county's jobs, and payroll for that matter, are in Wilmer. About 94% of the population growth in the last census occurred in Wilmer. The 2020 census highlighted several interesting trends in Wilmer and Kandiyohi County. The city of Wilmer has grown in population every census since it was incorporated in 1874. That's 14 consecutive censuses. Most cities in Minnesota, for that matter, can't say that. And Minneapolis can't say that, Mankato can't say that, Moorhead can't say that. And the 2020 census indicated that the city grew by 7.2%, very close to the national average of 7.4%. And the fastest rate, by the way, since the 1990 census. Similarly, the overall population of Kandiyohi County has grown each census, but at a slower rate. Kandiyohi County's 2020 population increased to 43,732, or 3.5% over 2010, so almost 44,000. The distribution of that population has also changed. In 1940, Wilmer represented about 29% of the county's population, while in 2020, Wilmer represented 48%. The new Kandiyohi County Housing Report is projecting that Wilmer will grow by 2,685 people by 2030. That overall, the rest of the county will see no net population growth. They'll see some additional households, but not population growth. And that Kandiyohi County will grow to 46,405 over the next 8 years. I should add, this is a higher growth rate than what the state demographer and the U.S. Census are projecting, but they have been wrong before. Why this growth? This growth projection partly stems from recent development trends. The commercial, industrial, and housing projects the EDC works on. Last year, Wilmer had close to a record construction going on, $90 million. And the county was respectable too, as well at $42 million. The growth also stems, I believe, from having a diverse economy. Don't put all your eggs into one basket. Not all sectors will be down at the same time. Interestingly enough, 7 of our towns out of the 12 had average household sizes that increased in the last census, including Wilmer, New London, Prindsburg, Spicer. Atwater saw the biggest increase in average household size from 2.37 to 2.89 people per household, which is higher, by the way, than 1990. If you look at Table 2 in the report that you should have there, On page 16, you will see the 2030 projections for population and for household growth. The latter being the better indicator for household demand. The more households you have, the more housing demand. After Wilmer, the next highest population increase, if you noticed, was for the city of New London. They were projecting 198 additional people in that city by 2030. And the city of Kandiyohi also was increasing by 76. If you look at the bottom of page 17, the greatest growth rate in Kandiyohi County this decade is projected among seniors. Seniors 75 and over are the primary target market for senior housing. Look at table 3 on page 18. In Wilmer, the 75 to 84-year-old population is projected to grow by 490 people, or 49% by 2030. For the rest of the county, the same population group, that is 75 to 84, is projected to grow by 836 people, or 59%. Think about this for a second. Our population is projected to grow by roughly 2,700 people, but half of that growth is going to be people aged 75 to 84. We better be ready for that. That has implications for our future housing needs. Their housing needs are different than people who are 45 to 64. They're different than people who are 20 to 44. Wilmer's population growth is projected among all major age groups this decade, but the fastest growth area is the senior population. With the exception of the 45 to 64-year-olds, Kandiyohi County will also see growth in major age groups, with the fastest growth in the senior population as well. To arrive at future housing demand in Kandiyohi County, Jay Thompson, the consultant who prepared these reports, includes projected household growth, pent-up rental demand, capturing a portion of the commuters to jobs in Wilmer, and he's thinking like 1%, and senior housing needs. Now, let's turn to the key findings at the top of page 2 of the report. So let's go back to page 2. So, yes.
Can you take questions as you go along, or you prefer to wait?
You can ask questions, sure.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Tell us where you're at, because we're all kind of scrolling.
Sure, I'm on page 18 yet, and you did briefly mention about the 55 to 64, actually in the county and the cities is going down. Is there an explanation for that? I mean, that's kind of a key age group for.
You're talking about 45 to 54?
Yes.
Yes.
Or 64, yes.
Yes.
55 to 64.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, it's called the boomers, okay?
Oh, and they're retiring early then?
Well, the boomers their population is growing through.
It'll be done?
Yeah, and as they age, then they're going to be moving to the 75 to 84 category.
Okay.
Yep.
And so they're not being filled in behind then, all right.
Okay. No, they're still there.
Still there.
For the most part.
Yeah, right.
That was a good
Thank
question.
you.
That was my question too about that age group.
So I would just say, again, because we have plenty of time and there's a lot of information here, if you want to ask a question and Aaron's willing to have his rhythm broken here, then
That's okay, thank you.
we'll try to answer them as we go, and I'm sure there'll be more later, so
Yes.
please proceed.
All right. So we're talking about housing demand. He prepared these reports with several factors in mind. Now, let's turn to page 2 of the report. So page 2, it shows the key findings.
The same report, go back to the,
Yep. So it's this page here where you see this table at the top. All right.
Is there a way to show it up on the screen, or could we do
Yeah, all
that?
I have to do is lay it down and she can put it up.
Okay.
All right. So I'm laying it down.
That way people listening can kind of follow it, I guess.
There you go.
There we go. All right. So What is he projecting for housing needs for Wilmer, for example, between 2022 and 2030? And as you can see at the top of this pyramid is a need for 1,580 housing units. And he breaks it down into 3 areas: senior housing, rental housing, and owner-occupied housing. Each of those have subcategories. For example, on the right, you can see senior housing. He's projecting a need for 615 senior housing units in Wilmer in the next 8 years. And he breaks it down with 55 plus rental, 240 units of that, and senior housing with services at 375. And then if you look over in the middle there, rental, 550, which I think we've been doing a pretty good job of working on multifamily housing. But I think this informs us that maybe we need to reorient a bit and focus on senior housing, because it takes time to do these developments. It's not like a switch that you just turn on and off. It's like roads. You have to plan for them, you have to design them, you have to build them. It takes time. Ownership, yes.
Excuse me one moment. On the senior units, you're looking at 55. Well, define a senior unit. So is a townhouse, slab on grade, that is very accessible to a senior, is that considered a senior unit? Or does it have to have services such as Bethesda or Copperleaf or others?
Right. So if you look at townhomes off to the left there, that would fall under the ownership side of it. Okay. If we are looking at senior housing and we break down what is supportive, you can look in the middle on the right there, and we break it down as independent living. So that would include units with Bethesda, 90 to 100 of those units, assisted living 45 to 55, and memory care 30 to 40. So the greatest demand, at least under the senior housing with services, is for independent living. And
But my
in terms
question
of,
is, the 615 units, would they all be sort of the Glen Oaks, Bethesda, Copperleaf model, or would that include buildings that are built market rate, maybe they're rentals, but, accommodate seniors?
yes, it would include the latter. It would include those as well.
Thank you.
So let's, in the interest of time, because I'm trying to stay on schedule here, what I'll do is skip to the bottom of page 2 and just talk a little bit about lots. So for example, in Wilmer, there's about 70 lots available for single-family homes. That sounds like a lot, but it's not. And they're recommending at least 50 additional lots for single-family homes. There's very few lots, and this is point number 7, available to accommodate townhomes. You were just asking, Mr. Chair, about townhomes, and there's not really any recent subdivisions that exist solely for townhomes. So if people are downsizing, they're going from 2 levels down to 1 level, what do we have available? It's a limited pool. And so they are recommending lots to accommodate up to 50 townhomes by 2024. They're recommending lots be made available for 1-level townhomes with attached 2-car garages, and then they've got a price range there. New rental, and look, turning to the next page on page 3, new rental developments under construction or in permit review process will meet the bulk of Wilmer's market rate rental demand. So for the multifamily housing that's going online right now, it seems like we're addressing that need pretty well. If you skip down below to point number 11, it is recommended that market rate senior 55 plus rental development be added to Wilmer with 80 to 100 units within the next 5 years. So can we add 20 units a year? I think that's possible.
Excuse me, Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Aaron, to this point about that we kind of skipped over briefly here about affordable rental property. There is a recommendation for 45 to 55 units of affordable. And then right below that, point 10 on this, it addresses an issue with one of our, our most major landlord who is in that space at Sweet Living, and they have approximately at the time of this report 85 vacancies, primarily due to the fact, if I'm not mistaken, that they haven't kept up on keeping up those units to make them habitable. That's a huge, huge issue for us. Are there any updates to your knowledge in that situation?
Right. Let me preface by saying that I felt strongly over the years that we should add more market rate housing here in this community. Why? Because we have people that are above the income restricted housing limits. And so it's important, and so that's where we've put a great deal of effort. And notice only a relatively small amount is affordable housing. So we have a fair number of income-restricted units. We're only looking at 45 to 55. But if you look at the vacancies at Sweet Living, for example, we could more than make up for it if they were functioning and they were quality units.
Could I stop you for a second too and ask, you're using the term affordable market, affordable housing and market rate housing, and then you also hear the terms workforce housing. Can you define those for us and anybody who's listening?
Right. So if you're talking about market rate, those are units that are built by developers, whether they're, the Lumber One people or the Unique Opportunities folks, et cetera, that whatever the market will bear. That is, they survey the community. They will say, these are our costs. This is where we need to be. If you're looking at affordable units, those are typically going to be ones that are income restricted. So, for example, for some of the housing TIF programs, it's kind of an 80-20 split, 80% market rate, 20% income restricted. Those 20% are going to be the affordable units, and it's based on size of the household. We talked about that before. So if you've got a larger household, you can have you would be looking at a different amount. Now, the HRA does have different programs. It's not, people think everything is Section 8 or something like that. That's not the case. There are tax credits out there. There are Section 8 units. There are affordable units that have a specific dollar amount. So that's what I'm referring to. In terms of workforce, and as well as for affordable, the great majority of those individuals are working. They just can't afford a market rate or a higher cost unit.
So just a little bit deeper on that. So then the old benchmark of 30% of your gross revenue going to housing, and I think that includes your mortgage or your rent and your electricity or heat and electricity. So would they fall in the market rate, or would they fall in the workforce, or would they fall in the affordable?
Depends on the household too. We have a number of people that are paying anywhere from 40 upwards of 50% of their income on housing. That is extremely high. Now, some of that is you've got typically the younger crowd that are going to be more likely to be renting. But then you also have the seniors as well. By the time it starts getting into, say, 75, you're going to see a flip there. We're going to see more people renting. And they may, if given their circumstances, be paying a higher percent on the housing costs, higher than 30%. So it really kind of depends on the household. In terms of getting back to your point, Commissioner Gardner, is that in terms of the status of Sweet Living, I've had discussions with the city about that. I'm concerned about it because I don't want people living in units that are not ideal. That is, you have high humidity, you have other issues going on in those units. That's not good for kids, it's not good for families. So one interesting stat that came out of this report regarding units, market affordable and income restricted units and so forth, the vacancy rate for for the Sweet Living units. Some of them were as high as 20%. But if you take out the Sweet Living units, the vacancy rate for all other rental units was 0.5%. So the city has some work to do.
And if I may, the reason that I bring this up, of course, is that my particular district has a lot of these types of units within it. And within my district, it is the most diverse and least financially affluent district overall of any within Candy-Ojai County. It contains the two census tracts with the lowest income. And so we have this need for good, safe housing for people, and it's not being met in this case by a particular supplier. And so I have this real concern that we make sure that we continue to address this within all of our efforts. I fully agree with you that we need to focus on senior housing, but we can't let this go by either. And so I'm hopeful that between the EDC and the HRA and other players in this, I'm hopeful that we can come up with some solutions. To an earlier point, I think one of the models for some of this affordable and accessible senior housing is our friends over at Independence Place, which is a cooperative model, and I hope that somebody takes a look at reviving that type of thing as we move forward. Thank you.
All right. So we're on the bottom of page 3 of the key findings. It's recommended that market rate senior 55 plus rental development be added in Willmar in 80 to 100 units, as I was mentioning. These units could be in a single multi-story building, multi-story being, kind of a larger structure. Some could be townhome style units with attached garages and so forth. And then they give a price range of what that might mean for their rents. It's recommended development of 165 to 195 independent assisted living and memory care housing to be added in Willmar within the next 5 years. Let's go on to the rest of the county now. We've been talking a little bit about Willmar, but there are other communities. And I'm going to give you 3 numbers, 48, 37, 15. It's not football. 48% represents the population in Willmar, 37% represents the population in the rural areas. Quite a few people live along the lakes. And then 15% is the population in the 11 other communities, okay? And those 11 communities have a combined population of around 6,400, and that has remained relatively unchanged since 2010. It is interesting to look at some of the zip codes. For example, you look at New London, for instance, it's got around 1,200 people, but its zip code is 5,200 people. So some of the districts, some of the zip codes have a fair number of people that reside in them. And you can kind of look at the changes there. Projections are that this decade, going to 2030, the population in the remainder of the county will decline slightly, about 1%. Much of the projected population decline is attributed to a decline in the overall household size, though there are exceptions. And the household base is projected to grow by almost 2%, or 176 households. We continue to have homes being built in the rural areas, and primarily north of Highway 12. The remainder of the county's population growth is projected among the major age groups, with the senior population projected to grow more quickly. And then if you want to look on the top of page 5, again, similar, and I'm going to put this, if the IT person wants to put it up there, looking at the housing demand on the rural areas of the county and smaller communities. You can kind of see there that there's about 975 units, so there's 1,580 on the Willmar side, 975 units are needed on the rest of the county. That's a fair number. And you can see that basically senior and owner-occupied units are almost tied. That is, we need 390 owner-occupied units and 385 senior units. And if you want to go down and look at the middle of the page there, let's look at the seniors. You can again look at independent, assisted living, memory care, and kind of that breakout there with 60, 50, 30, and 80 there. 80 being the market rate, 55 plus. What was interesting for me coming out of this report, at least in terms of some of the other communities, if you look at the housing units that were built in the past recent decades, 80% of those were in New London Spicer. And then the remaining ones elsewhere in the county. That is in the communities, okay? And then for the next 8 years, the projection is about 75% of that growth will be in those two communities in terms of units. About 225 to 250 single-family homes should be built to meet demand over the next 5 years. Is that realistic in the rural parts or in Candy, Ojai, rural areas outside of Wilmer? I think it is. Last year we had around 52 single-family homes built in areas outside of Wilmer. So I think that's doable. 115 to 125 is projected in the rural parts of the county, particularly on the lakes. Demand is largely for move-up or executive homes priced over $325,000. The remainder of the demand for move-up executive homes is largely in New London and Spicer. There's more entry-level and more economical units elsewhere in the remaining communities. Now, let's turn to page 6. So this is a summary of housing recommendations by community here. I'm not going to go through all 12, but I want to highlight a couple of things. Let's take Atwater, for example. Recommendation coming from Jay was single-family home, townhome subdivision with 15 lots. He's saying you need some more lots for single-family homes. He's also recommending a workforce rental housing building for 10 to 12 units. That would be about the right size for Atwater. They can't handle a 72-unit complex like would be in Wilmer, for example. The question is, can you get a developer to build 10 or 12 units? That's going to be the $64,000 question. Right now, I have distributed these reports to 45 different people, individuals, and developers. 6 of those are developers. One of those developers that I've been interacting with specializes in dealing with communities under 5,000. That's what I want. So I'm saying, hey, can you take a look at Raymond? Can you look at some of these communities for some housing? New London, a single-family townhome subdivision with 50 plus lots. That sounds like a lot, but I think that's what's going to be needed in New London. New London is an interesting case. It has 1,000 people that work there, almost as much as live in the community. It has seen growth, fairly consistent over the last 30 years. And so I think it has some potential for another single family. In fact, I've had people call me from New London inquiring about that. Workforce market rate, affordable apartment building, 85 units is recommended. Supportive senior housing with 90 units. Now there's an asterisk there. If you look at the bottom, New London and Spicer share the same general market. They're basically 4 miles apart. So this consultant basically says, New London and Spicer, you're part of the same market. Now, if you're talking to people in New London and Spicer, they may have a different view on that. But his point is...
Stop you there for a second. Please do not perpetuate the Civil War of 1965. Because most of us didn't go to high school here when we built that high school.
There's a little competition there. It is not recommended that they each... Yes.
You may want to center that so the public can see it.
Okay, sorry. And there we go. So it is not recommended that each add 90 units of supportive senior housing, but instead it would go in one of those communities. All right. So I think I'm going to stop. I think I've used up all my time, but I would be happy to answer questions. I could talk at length about other data, but I want to allow some time for Q&A.
Well, I'll start. I'm sure there's a lot more questions, but I forget the guy's name?
Jay?
Jay. Or is anybody looking at, okay, so there's a great need for senior housing right now. And we all know the baby boomer numbers and all that stuff. What about 20 years from now when most of the baby boomers will be gone? What are we going to do with all that housing? And then what kind of housing will we need 20 years from now or 30 years from now?
Mr. Chair, very good question. What I would say is if you're building housing, you want to have some flexibility in it so that you can make some changes, that you can address some things. I'm a big believer in repurposing facilities if it is economical. And I would say that if you can build some facilities that can be modified, great. But I think I'm being optimistic here, notwithstanding the state demographer. I think we're going to see continued development. We're going to see continued growth. And so I think there will be continued demand for housing in our communities. Unlike a majority of greater Minnesota in counties, we're seeing growth here. And I think that's partly related to the developments that we're having. It's partly related to the investments going on into this community. I don't think we would see housing developers invest millions of dollars into this community unless they thought they could get a return, unless they thought that there was growth potential. And if you look at some of the buildings that have been completed, like Preserve on 24th, they opened up 2 months ago. They were full in 30 days. There is demand.
So I just the comment about growth, and we are very fortunate that Kaneohe County, unlike some other counties, continues to grow. But I'm reminded of a presentation I was at the New London Spicer High School about 10 years ago, where the state demographer said the greatest predictor of population growth is water. And so we're fortunate at Kaneohe County. We have a lot of water, we have a river, we have a lot of lakes. And so I think we can continue to expect growth that way. The challenge would be to manage it in the right proportions. Commissioner Berg.
Just a question, when you talk about growth, and just to piggyback on that, with the industrial park and all the stuff we're seeing, the demand's going to be there. And these housing numbers almost seem low when what I get from the figures that are going to possibly happen out there with all our new industries taking place.
Well, Commissioner Berg, what I would say is I don't like to overpromise. And so what I would say is, if we can stay in that middle track.
Sure.
I went back and looked at a study that was done back in the 90s, and we weren't at the low projection, we weren't at the highest, we were right smack dab in the middle. And I kind of like being a steady Eddie if we can do it.
So my question would be, so you showed us the growth in the county is New London Spicer. That's where outside of Wilmer, right?
Well,
and my curiosity is in Wilmer, which way is most of the growth? Is that north and west? That's what I'm assuming, but I don't know.
Well, Commissioner Anderson, what I would say is first, leadership can change things. Leadership can say, you know what, we are going to focus on X, Y, Z. And that would change the reports here. I mean, I think the EDC's involvement in the working with developers has changed things in Wilmer. And I think that can be true for other communities as well. If Spicer or New London or Atwater decide, hey, we want to make this a priority, then that changes the facts on the ground. You can have a developer do something that wasn't planned for. So, and then your other point, I'm just losing it right now.
Wilmer, which direction is
Oh, yeah.
the most growth?
So if you look at where the units were built in the last decade, from 2010 to 2020, the quadrant that saw the most number of units was the southeast quadrant.
Okay.
I think, this is my crystal ball, I think that for 2030, you're going to see that shift to the north. We're already seeing a look at the units with unique opportunities and potentially along Lakeland and other directions. I think we're still going to see development on the south side and east and other directions, but I think it's going to start shifting. And that's just the nature of it. What land is available. I just received a layout for another project, in kind of the Waterview Park area. Great, let's go for it.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Aaron, even though I, tend to want to advocate for my district and for the city in which I live, I want to express my appreciation to you for having gone out and gotten this done on a county-wide basis. I know that the HRA board felt that it was really important that we have data for all of our county and not just the city of Wilmer. We tend to be the 600-pound gorilla in the room. And, we're a regional center. I think these things are going to be sometimes Wilmer-centric, but I really appreciate the focus that this brings to the rest of the county as well. And I just wanted to thank you again for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Gardner. What is the objective of this housing report, and what is not the objective of this housing report? That would be the question. And what I would say, 'cause most comments that I've received, of course, maybe it's selective, have been positive about the report. But I had one person say, well, this doesn't solve the problem of interest rates. This doesn't solve the problem of how do you deal with construction costs. And my response is, well, the objective of the housing study was to identify our housing stock needs, not solve the issues of construction costs, interest rates, housing availability. That is a bigger task working with our partners. And so, we want to identify the needs and then try to go from there.
Commissioner Berg.
Well phrased. I see this as a tool to accomplish the other things that you were talking about. It's a very good tool, and thank you. I'd like to echo what Commissioner Gardner said. Very good report.
So if you need a little balance on the positive versus negative comments, I would point out, though, that the comparison of Wilmer and people who travel into Wilmer with Duluth is probably a little bit of a stretch, given the two geographies. And quite honestly, the report indicated to me that because those jobs are all in Wilmer, we should assume that people want to live in Wilmer and would move to Wilmer if there was housing there. And I think, the proximity of all of these smaller towns in a relatively small geographic county isn't necessarily the case. In fact, it's a little bit incongruent with what we just read in the paper yesterday regarding why the the enrollment at Wilmer schools is going down. Their determination was that people were moving out of the district. So we just have to be careful with the information that we can't, use a template, from one community to match the templates of all the other communities.
Right. What I would say, a couple thoughts on that. One is if you're looking at shifts back and forth, people moving in, moving out, it depends on the populations. Which populations? So based on the information I've been receiving and hearing about, I think what we're seeing is some of the East African population has been moving to the Twin Cities or back to home countries, less so on the Latino, and we've got a growing Asian population. And why would that be the case? I can speculate. I think there's a couple of factors. One is housing. If you have a limited number of, say, units that are 4 and 5 bedrooms, and you have large families and you can't house them, where are you going to go? Similarly, job opportunities, or if you can't find childcare, you're going to go. And so I think there's a number of factors that are impacting us. And I would also say comparisons are helpful sometimes, but I would agree there's a limitation. I can give you a comparison right now between us and Minneapolis. And I think in some ways we're doing a better job than Minneapolis. What do I say that for housing? Well, Minneapolis has 13 precincts. Wilmer has 4. If you look at where they have put their money in Minneapolis, the top 5 housing projects in Minneapolis are all in one precinct, precinct 13, Lucky 13, which is the downtown, not even the whole downtown, it is one slice of the downtown. And the majority of it is going into one area of the community. That's not the case for Wilmer. Wilmer, 3 out of the 4 precincts have had housing developments. We're not loading in one area.
So, any other questions regarding the report? Then I would follow up this report is being presented to the county board, kind of, what is our role in this?
Well, I would say you can certainly accept it, hopefully, and I would say that take this information. There's a lot of information that I have not covered in here. Try to digest it and think about recommendations, because there's things that we can do at the HRA level, et cetera. For example, should we look at a housing trust? That's one question that's hot right now between Wilmer and the county. Are there other things, other priorities we should be doing, regulatory or otherwise?
So the other comment that when I speak with my colleagues from around the state, and it's not just housing, by the way, it's infrastructure, is a lot of the small communities just simply lack the resources. There's a ton of opportunities that appear to be coming down the road that we could take advantage of if we had the resources to know how to take advantage of them. So you mentioned some of the smaller communities, they don't have an Aaron Backman that, is seeing this happening. So we have to figure out where the resources come from that can go after the funding for an Atwater or a Raymond or a New London or a Regal even. It's tough right now. So that's maybe a role for us if we can figure out how to find those people. But maybe you have some thoughts.
Mr. Chair, what I would say is, don't get me wrong, Mel, there is never enough money for roads. There's never enough resources for everything we want to do. We have to prioritize. That's just the name of the game. And what I would say is not so much the amount, but what we do with the resources that we do have is the most important.
And I meant mostly human resources, those people that can assist these communities to get to go after the HRA grants or the USDA grants or what's out there. So, any other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much for that presentation. I have done a couple reads on it, and I think there's opportunities in there, and hopefully we can gain from it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Now, have we skipped over anything else? I don't think so.
You want to take a break?
You want to take a break? We can take a 5-minute break. We'll break for 5 minutes. I'll reconvene the Kennewick County Board of Commissioners meeting. We are you, oh, I had already crossed you off, Larry, sorry about that.
That's what happens.
How soon they forget, right?
I know.
So I had put a mark through that item. Approving a lease, Larry, proceed, please.
Good thing you
Larry
got something
Kleindow,
sooner.
Kennewick County Administrator, last time here. As you know, for the last 24 months or longer, I've been updating you regarding the reconciliation that we've been working on for this 16-bed and the Midwest campus as we had downsized. And we've been negotiating for the last last 2 years in trying to get everything straightened out. And we reached an agreement last week, and I thought it was everything in place. And on Friday even, I got another phone call, and there was an attempt to adjust the agreement we had from Department of Human Services. The good thing is that the Department Administration and Kennewick County were reluctant to make any changes, and so DHS agreed to leave the amendment that I'm presenting you today. And so after a long, hard effort, before we start, I just want to thank Karen Anderson from the Auditor Treasurer's Office, Karen Dahlman from my office, and Julie Hayden from the Department of Admin to be able to pull this together along with DHS. So this amendment today is a fix of all the leases that we had starting back in 2007. And then as we sold the campuses, what happened is that the square footage and stuff was never adjusted, therefore making errors in each one of the leases that we did throughout the years. So this original addendum, or at least started in 2007, but the fixes really take place starting in 2017 after we sold some of the buildings on campus. And so it goes to 2017, and you'll see in each one of the years the corrections and the deletions of the amendments, and you have that in your packet. And I hope you had some good bedtime reading, looking this over. And it probably was like reading an old VCR manual, and I'm kind of dating myself on that, but it's very complicated, but it's a process that addresses the past leases, what had to be deleted, and in each one of the years, you'll see a dollar amount. Some of the dollar amounts that you'll see, there were overpayments by us, and then some of the years you'll see underpayments by them to us. And then you'll see as we go through, there's adjustments for the square footage on each one of the years, which would address each one of the contracts. The bottom line is that when this is all said and done, I will be asking you to cut a check to DHS or to Department Admin in the amount of $30,466.96. And that is the corrections from what they owed us and then what we owed them. And there was total, what we were started out with the leases that we were short is about $151,000, and what it came out to what we were short to them was that $30,000. You'll also notice that besides lease 11513, this also adjusts the leases 11466. The leases 1146, that's the ones that are the buildings that are on the Midwest campus now. So just so you're aware, so there are two lease numbers in here. One was for the 16-bed, that's a 11513, and then the ones on campus of the old buildings were the other lease. And so, Mr. Chair, after a lot of negotiating back and forth, we have agreed to put together replacement reserve cost. It is in our files and our funds. We'll separate those dollars that go directly that the state pays us from DHS. will go directly into the replacement reserves, and then there will be a line item just for operating expenses. So the auditor treasurer's office will be doing more administrative work, but it's going to be cleaner. This won't occur again because we no longer have multiple leases that are taking place. We'll no longer have buildings that we're downsizing, and so this will be cleaner. So when Kelsey and Karen work on the 2022 reconciliation, they'll just have one expenditure report that they have to look at versus 8 and try to reconcile them. So it's just going to be one straight expenses and the revenues, and so they'll be able to track that. We have agreed in part of this process that we will be sending the state of Minnesota reports on a quarterly basis on the reserve accounts, and again, for accounting. So I believe we finally have this taken care of. This is a good result. When I'm done, after you've either accepted or denied this, if you deny it, then we won't have to have the next speaker, Karen Anderson, come and talk about transferring funds. But if you accept it, I'm recommending to the board that you make the transfer to make this payment, and it's a one-time payment, so you're not tracking over 2 or 3 years. It cleans up the mess before Kelsey has to take over. And it just makes it cleaner for everybody regarding from Department Admin and DHS and Canada County. During this process, we've had 6 different people we worked with for Department Admin. We've had 8 people or more working from DHS, and from Canada County, we probably had 4 people. And so what has happened throughout the years is somebody leaves, somebody passes away, somebody retires, everything got mixed up. And so by cleaning this up and doing one payment, it's settled. Is there any questions?
It appears to me that this is a bit of a reset.
Yes, it is.
Seems like
Zach, good word.
you're reconciling stuff from years ago, and this would be a good, clean way to, as I said, reset it and move forward. So I saw Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would move approval of the lease 11513 with the Amendment 17 and the attached exhibits.
So Commissioner Gardner moves on the request. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
Commissioner Burke seconds. Are there comments or questions?
I did have a question. In reference to the replacement reserves, just so I understand and clear about that, for that replacement, is there a cap on that, or how does that all work?
No, so
Can you
each
explain
month
that a little bit more? Yeah.
each month they'll pay us $1,416 or $17,000 a year. So that goes in a special fund. So anytime they need carpeting or a hole in the wall fixed or a security system fixed, that they'll have a fund to do that. And so it speeds up the process. So through the state process for them to ask for money, it slows it down. By having an account here that's based in the county, as we fix it, then we just take that money out of there instead of billing them. So that money is kind of like a savings account for the Department of Human Services.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now I believe that following this action, we need to move the funds, and Karen will explain that to us.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good
Karen.
morning.
Karen Anderson, Chief Financial Officer. As Larry's explained, the 16-bed lease, it's been an ongoing situation that we've finally gotten worked through, and we are down to just owing them the $30,466.96. With that being said, it is a one-time payment. I'd like the board to authorize paying that from the capital equipment fund, so then that we can have that all taken care of, and yet we will have the reserve amount required by the state in the Fund 8 fund.
So you heard Karen's request to transfer the funds. How do you wish to act?
I'll move approval of the request.
Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Karen, I just want to say thank you to you and Larry and Karen for getting this to what I consider to be a much cleaner spot than what it has been over the years, and hopefully going forward, we'll be able to,
Yes, hopefully.
as long as we have a lease with them, it'll be a lot simpler. Here, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, Mel, I didn't notice this earlier. You have one more resolution that we could have covered earlier, but you weren't doing anything anyway, so you might.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, once again, Mel Odens, Public Works Director. So what you have in your packet is a resolution that is a pass-through money that the money that the state gets through primarily through the gas tax. 5% of that goes to three sources. One would be the town bridge, one would be the town road, and one would be the flexible highway. We're talking the town road. So it's a pass-through money that the county is the steward of that money. We hand it down to the townships, and this year it's the amount is $490,473. You might want to note that that's a 27.6% decrease from last year. But I think what we should also understand is that last year was a 49.6% increase from any other year before that. And it was part of the due to the whole COVID and the ARPA dollars and all of this money that was infused into the system. So our running average of pass-through from this 5% account to the townships is running about $460,000 to $470,000 a year. This year it's $490,473, which is the highest amount in the 9 years that I've been managing this fund for the townships. So with that, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that we pass Resolution 2023-10 and authorize these payments to the 24 townships in Kennewick County.
So you heard the recommendation from Mr. Odens on Resolution 2023-10. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll move 2023-10.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson moves 2023-10. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any further discussion or comments? Questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Any signatures anybody needs today? Get them to me. So, we've covered all our agenda items. We're up to administrative updates, appointments, calendars, and so forth. As you know, we would be leaving this meeting, if it hadn't been for the snowstorm that is likely to be coming through most of the state, we'd be leaving for St. Paul for the legislative conference. That has been changed to a completely virtual conference, so we have more time, is what I'm saying, than we probably did. So if we haven't done the report outs for a couple of meetings, so I don't care where we start here. Kelsey, if you don't mind, I'm going to wait for the administrative updates till after we report out, if that's okay with you. So Dale, you want to start first?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit. I guess the thing that I wanted to bring up and I guess thank the board and everybody is I got to go to Commissioner Training 101 down in the cities. It was a very good training. Like I got told by the other commissioners in the room, I probably learned more from talking to people at lunch and in the evenings at socials and just visiting with people from the other counties around the state, probably more than the actual presenters. The one thing I guess that I want to say, and I think this is the most important thing that I probably will take from the whole meeting is, open meeting law is what scares me probably the most because I'm not used to that part of it. And it's something different than I've dealt with on the co-op side, which is my past. But the thing that I guess I'll never forget, and I think it's an important thing that we all as commissioners remember is never reply all. And that was all they said, that if you can just remember to not reply all and just only reply to that one person that you're communicating, that's the most important thing about anything you do as a commissioner. So I guess that's the one takeaway that I guess I'll hold and try and do my best to adhere to, is that open meeting law is a complicated thing to me, but they did a great job presenting on it. But in general, I guess it was a great learning experience to go to this training, and I just want to thank everybody for that, so.
You know, at the Association of Minnesota Counties, I've been advocating for new commissioner, or I should say review commissioner 202, because, you know, you're so new, and they throw so much stuff at you, there's so much to learn, that a review after a year or two probably wouldn't hurt any of us. And the Commissioner 101, did you get a decent one, Dwayne Anderson?
Mine was Zoom, so
Zoom.
I felt ripped off.
Yeah, and I would agree that you got ripped off.
Because you never really got to be face to face with any of the other new commissioners, so it's you know, you recognize them, but you don't know for sure if they.
So I'll continue to advocate for another class. For those who had a year or two under the belt and can go on. So thanks, Dale. Commissioner Gardner, are you ready?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank my friend Commissioner Dale Anderson for noting that he learned more from the visiting than he did from the presenters. I was actually one of the presenters for talking about work-life balance. And that was a nice little panel discussion that we had, and I hope that it had a small impact, maybe not as much as the afterglow, but nonetheless. So it's been a bit of a busy month, and I can mention that we've had a number of different meetings. Obviously, we're not going to the conference. That's all online. There is still a possibility that I'll be in St. Paul on Friday for a State Community Health Services Advisory Committee meeting. I'm the voting member of the Candida County Renville Community Health Board. And we're still scheduled as of this point in time to meet down in St. Paul. So we'll see if that develops. A couple of things of note. The Humane Society annual meeting, which I attended. By the way, they have their Save Our Tails online auction. And folks can check that out by going to their website. Don't outbid me. CVB board retreat, and I think there's going to be some additional convention visitors marketing types of initiatives that are going to come out of that. On short notice, I did make it to the Senator Klobuchar's Farm Bill listening tour, and that was actually informative. Couple of things that I do want to mention real briefly here. You mentioned Mr. Backman earlier talking about the Housing Trust Fund. I do believe that we're going to hear about that at our next meeting. At least that's the hope. And being able to consider establishing that. That could potentially be one of the tools that all of our communities would be able to make available to be able to access communities, developers, and so forth. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that on March 6th, that's a Monday evening, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. out at the Robbins Island shelter, the new shelter, there will be a child care meeting. This is a meeting that's going to be available to folks who are current providers, both in-home and center-based, as well as folks who would like to find out whether how they could potentially become child care providers. And that is going to have a lot of different program information and how to access that from various places. We'll have EDC and Mid-Minnesota Development Corp staff there, as well as some of the folks from the RCCIP. That is from 6:30 to 8 p.m. On Monday, March 6th. And you can check this out on the EDC's website at candiohigh.com. And that is, I think, all I'm going to take up today.
Thank you. Then I'll keep the back and forth going here.
Oh, all right, okay. I'll go next then, and I will start out with Prime West. Commissioner Anderson and Dale Anderson and myself attended that. It was more of an orientation meeting this time. It was an extremely long meeting. I think we left there pretty well brain dead after a while because, being a healthcare facility, their accounting is different, than we're used to, and it's a big organization, but it was a very good meeting, excellent meeting, and I'm thinking we're coming along, and it's really important that the alternate be informed as much as possible in something like this. So this is kind of one of those committees that alternates are encouraged to attend if it works out for them. It's not necessary at all, but they're encouraged to attend. And for good backup if we ever need it. The other thing is, just a heads up, I think I might have mentioned it before, the Hot Creek One Watershed Plan. At this point, we got that approximately $90,000 grant from Bowser, but we have to match it with a 10% match eventually. And so the suggestion is plans to go back to the three counties, our county, Chippewa County, and Renville County, and ask them for $15,000 each to put in as a match. And I think we saw this coming down the road anyway. So, and we can do it two ways, do it all at one time or $5,000 each year. And it's not something that we have to deal with tomorrow. They're talking about maybe in June or July sending out some bills to the counties and see how they want to pay for it. So I'll bring that up again. I'm thinking we didn't do a formal vote on that. And then we just had a similar discussion before, so we'll have to probably do it at that time to authorize that, or we can just go ahead and pay the bill. We can talk about it later. Also had a meeting with the CCT, or Central Community Transit, or the bus company. As you're all well aware of, Tiffany Collins is not retiring, is moving on to Prime West. Unfortunately, we're losing her. The good news is she's still going to stay in the system, and it's going to be a big loss for us for our transportation program with her experience. And so we had a special meeting and talking about, we set up a committee to put together the job description, set the salaries, to start a search for that as fast as we can. A couple of good news things is that Tiffany is more than open to try work with us to make this work and transition this whole thing. So she will work with us part-time after hours and so forth while she's working with Prime West as well to help cover until we get somebody. Donna, who is also the manager for the CCT in Meeker County or Litchfield, but she's a manager, doesn't have to deal with all the stuff in the past that Tiffany had to deal with. So, but she's more than willing to help out too. So we got some backups at that, and some possible clients, or not clients, individuals who might be interested in the position. So that's it's a big loss for us, but we'll just have to move forward with that. Woodland Centers, we had an orientation meeting with Woodland Centers, being a new board member there, and it was a very good meeting. And again, that's pretty kind of like Prime West is that they're changing. They're looking at how they operate. So the information that we discuss is because it's a lot of medical information. We have to be a lot more careful about what we share and what's happening. So just so you're aware of that. Myself and Commissioner Dale Anderson attended drug court this past week. There was a snowstorm, but they still had it, and we showed up, and you even showed up. You had a long ways to drive. And it was very, very good, and it's so appreciative that if we get a chance, at least one commissioner could show up. I know Commissioner Gardner too attended, and Commissioner Anderson has too. But the graduates really appreciate that, and the courts, I think it's good that they see we're there in support of them. I think probably that pretty well hits almost everything that I would want to pass on at this point. That's of significant. I can go on about all the other meetings I had, but I will pass it on now.
I will go on record, Commissioner Byrd. you remind Mr. Prisbilla that he said he was not going to harvest employees from the counties that are part of Prime West.
Yeah, I know. Next meeting, we are going to give him a very hard time.
Commissioner
And it
Anderson,
better stop, yes, exactly.
Well, part of the thing with, when you have, a lot of good employees, a lot of times they do move on, which, you know, it's kind of a loss, but at the same time, it shows that, they're being trained up well in our county. I would say that they move on. So, my report would be, I'm just going to talk about the drainage conference I attended on February 8th and 9th. I didn't know if I should really go or if I'd learn anything, but I'm happy I went. There were about 180 people that had signed up for the conference. I'm not sure if it was, I think there were at least 150 people there. And it was kind of interesting from like a historical point of view. I mean, they talked about like when the state was formed and how they dealt with drainage projects back then versus how they deal with them now. And back then it was pretty much drain everything. Now it's wait a minute, let's take a step back here. And so there's that tension between still to this day, and it was back then too. It was just kind of the opposite way. But now it's more of a conservation type viewpoint, and so there's a tension between landowners and maybe conservationists, and they've been dealing with that ever since the state was formed, pretty much. And so it was good to see that historical perspective, and then. It was presented mostly by H2 overviewers. They're viewers that do redetermination of benefits and amongst other things. And it was really good to see them give their presentations and talks about how they do redetermination of benefits and how it's kind of changed over the years. And so I because I'm in the southern half of the county where there's a lot of drainage and a lot of ditch systems, it was just a good overview to go to it. And I think if they have it again, I'd probably go again. So.
thanks, Commissioner Anderson, and I know that Lori Kupax, who organized that, she was quite excited that they had that kind of a turnout. And H2 overview.
They were expecting maybe 50 to 75 people sign up, and it was 180 people that signed up.
All right, thank you. I will touch on a few things that I was involved with in the last. So I went to the Broadband Connect meeting in Mystic Lake about a month ago now, where again they were trying to bring together the ISPs, the internet service providers, the counties, the cities, whatever, to basically network. But we had some really good presentations too about the opportunities that are available funding-wise. And again, I was surprised at perhaps the lack of, or the small number of counties that were represented there. So we were represented very well. We had EDC there, we had City of Wilmer there, we had the county there. So yeah, we're in a good spot. We just have a lot of work left to do. And then at our last AMC board meeting, one of the highlights of the meeting was a reception that we held at the AMC offices with legislators from the Minnesota House and Senate. And again, Matt Hilgard didn't know if we'd get one or 50, and we got closer to 50. So there was a lot of new legislators, so they were trying to get to know them. And then also invited a lot of the like the chairs, committee chairs, and there's the movement at the legislature this year is at a breakneck speed. Our staff at AMC is they're working overtime trying to keep up with everything, and certainly appreciate that. But it's too bad we can't go today and support the advocacy that they do with our own stories, because sometimes those stories have more impact than our staff can have. I was asked by the Association of Minnesota Counties to consider being the county commissioner representative in the state of Minnesota on the LRIP advisory board. So MnDOT has an advisory board for the local road improvement program. And so I accepted that challenge, and I had some training with them recently on how that whole process works. So it's not going to be a lot of time commitment, but it's kind of a big responsibility so that the money goes where we need it to go. And then last night we had a Prairie Woods Environmental Learning Center meeting. Oh, it was cold up on that hill last night. But there's a lot of changes taking place there with kind of it's been, a year and a half now almost for Jennifer, and new ideas, probably new processes taking place. And one of the things that came up last night that I was most excited about was, for one thing, we only have to go to half as many meetings as we used to on that cold hill, because they're letting the executive committee do a little bit more of the day-to-day work. They meet every month for kind of a long time, and they have a very engaged group. And then we as a governing board will meet every other month for a little bit longer period of time. But one of the things they talked about last night was to seek a regional, would it be a regional park?
Yep.
Designation, which they've never had, which can bring a lot of resources to the table. And so they might be reaching out to Mid-Minnesota Development Commission to help them through that process, and maybe even Mel has some advice for them on what they may or may not do. And I think that ties into our current update on our trails plan, because there's no reason you couldn't include Prairie Woods Environmental Learning Center in on the trails plan, especially being they do the fat tire biking and that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's my report. And so Kelsey, we'll turn it over to you again. Welcome. And so you kind of saw how this process works. The other thing we usually do is go through our calendars here on what we need to do before the next board meeting.
Okay. And I think, Larry, did you want to say anything?
Sure. The only thing Mr. Chair, I just want to remind the public that is watching TV today, or watching this, is that if MnDOT or our county says no travel, that means no travel. Stay home. Don't put our employees at risk that where they have to, and other emergency personnel to go out and try to rescue you because you didn't want to abide by what the rules are. If they're telling you to no travel, that's what that means. And as you recall, when we had our board meeting, we recognized people who risked their life to go out and caravan to save people. We don't want that to happen again, because we might not get as lucky this next time. So that's the only thing I have to report.
Thank you.
I don't have a lot to report other than I've been just meeting with a lot of department heads, a lot of staff, many different staff in the next couple weeks here, probably 6 to 8 weeks, on just, top priorities, goals that we have for the organization as a whole, goals that we have for personnel, professionalism, things like that. And so I've just been working on that. And then Mel just talked about March 28th. Do you want to touch on that a little bit, Mel?
County Administrator Baker and I talked briefly. We need to do a road and bridge meeting. And so if you could take a look at March 28th, we still have a couple more meetings that we can solidify the date. And then also, this board approved the sale of some excess property on March 30th. Just so you know, we did this a while back, but sometimes, as we've learned in other projects, that sometimes a good little gentle reminder that you're going to see an ad in the paper, you're going to see it pretty well splashed, but we've got 3 parcels of land, about 44 acres, that we approved Floodable Auctions to do the auction. And so this is going to take place on 10 o'clock on March 30th. And they like to do a neutral site, which I've never done with them before, but they're going to go to Robbins Island, a new shelter. So it's a neutral site. It's not any government building. It's not their land. It's not. And so, but anyway, so the first ad's going to hit the paper on Saturday, but when they do a push, they do a push. Okay. And it's county land. And so you're going to see our Kennewick County listed, and you're going to see acres. And so this is the first 3 parcels of the Wilmer-Y excess property. That's all I have.
So did we set that road and bridge meeting? Which
No,
We-
we're
we
just
did not.
tentatively having you look at your calendars for March 28th from 8:30 to
To
around
like,
11.
yep.
So why don't we do that right now, actually? If
That's,
everybody has their
that's that
calendar.
extra week we get
Yes.
once in a
Right.
while, so it should be pretty clear for,
I see him nodding.
unless
over
if we
here.
got vacations coming up, so, but it'll work for me.
It works for me.
Will work for me.
Let's
I'm
just,
trying to
let's
leave it
just put it
open,
on the calendar.
but-
Before
Are you trying to
something else
vacation?
happens.
Yeah, well, I got nothing on the books yet. so. It's fine.
Yep, and you're all gonna get an invite from me, because that's the only way my phone knows how to do that.
Oh.
You gotta change my settings.
8:30
And just-
to what? Did you say?
Till 11 or
8:30 to
so.
11.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, and then just one other thing I wanted to touch on that Commissioner Gardner did is the local housing trust fund. I did meet with the HRA on that, and that will be coming, I'm aware that you have heard it read before at prior meetings, but that will come to the board on March 7th. So if you have any questions or any information on that, that will be brought to the board at the 7th.
Yeah, Commissioner Gardner and I met with Jill Bankston about a week ago. And there was a couple of small tweaks that she had left to make on it. And so she'll be bringing it back to us now.
Yes, and her and I met, so there was a few more tweaks, and she might be contacting the two of you on that. And so we'll have pretty much a good draft, a final copy ready to go.
All right, anything else? Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you. And just to clarify, this will be just the consideration of the ordinance establishing the trust fund, and then the policies and procedures will follow at a future date.
Thank you. All right, so
Just a quick update. I talked about the 15,000 for the one watershed plan. Also, the soil and water is going to contribute out of their budgets equal. So it'd be 6, that's how it comes up to 10%.
okay, very good. So before we go, I want to remind all the public and anybody watching this today that Friday, the weather should have calmed down greatly by this time. Friday from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Please join us downstairs in the community room and helping Larry with a send-off. And so, Larry, you want to say anything about that, or? No. So from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock on Friday in the Health and Human Services Community Room, a retirement recognition for Larry Kleino for all the hard work he's done for all these years. And is there any food? Cake and coffee, I suppose, huh? Cookies. Cookies and coffee, all right. With Minnesota Viking decorations on it. All right. Anything else to come before the board? Then we will be adjourned.